Imagine trying to run a marathon while you are, still bleeding in the emergency room.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that sounds completely insane.
Right, like you have the doctors frantically trying to patch up your acute injuries, just keeping your heart beating.
Right, the immediate triage.
Exactly. While at the exact same time, a physical therapist is literally shouting at you to focus on your 10-year marathon training plan.
It's an impossible balancing act.
It really is. But that is exactly what a national economy looks like when it accepts a $200 million disaster relief bailout on the exact same day it promises a $36 billion export goal.
Yeah, the juxtaposition there is just wild.
It's dizzying. Anyway, welcome to the show, everyone. Today is Wednesday, July 15th, 2026, and you are tuned into another deep dive, proudly part of the RTV Global Network.
Delighted to be here.
And real quick, before we jump into this chaos, I want to give a quick shout out to our friends Alex and Maya over at the Daily Commute.
Oh yeah, their latest stuff is fantastic.
If you haven't caught their latest deep dive into urban infrastructure, you are genuinely missing out. It's just brilliant.
Absolutely.
But for our mission today, for you listening right now, we are taking a whirlwind of breaking news, local events, and these massive global macroeconomic shifts, and we are going to look at the mechanisms driving them.
Because they really are all connected, even if they don't seem like it at first glance.
Exactly. I mean, today we are talking about high-stakes political accountability, a begging AI robot, venomous snakes escaping into floodwaters, and late-game World Cup heroics.
I know, it sounds like a random grab bag, right? It is a massive spectrum of human activity to unpack.
Yeah, for sure.
But if we look closely, there is actually a very clear narrative through line connecting all of these seemingly random events.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's the through line?
Well, we are essentially watching a real-time stress test of systemic fragility versus human resilience.
Oh, I like that framing.
Right, so we are going to look at how systems break down, whether that is through climate disasters, regional wars, or institutional corruption.
Yeah.
And we're going to look at the exact mechanisms society uses to try and correct those breakdowns and rebuild.
Let's start right at the ground level with that idea of institutional correction, because we are seeing what looks like a massive accountability wave locally right now.
We really are. It's fascinating.
There is this sudden, extreme concentration of legal actions and arrests. Just looking at the board, you have former Minister Wimal Weerawansa's brother, Sarif Weerawansa, arrested by the Police Financial Crimes Investigation Division.
Right.
And the charge there is the alleged misuse of state vehicles and fuel.
Which is an interesting place to start.
Yeah. And then SB Desanayak's brother, JLF Bandara Desanayak, who is a former provincial councillor, was just granted bail in connection with a staggering 27.5 million rupee financial fraud case.
Yeah, that's a completely different scale.
Exactly. And on top of that, an open warrant has been issued for the wife of the former Sri Lankan Airlines CEO.
Right, so you have this really broad sweep happening.
Yeah, and my question is this just optics? Because suddenly throwing the book at vehicle misuse alongside multi-million rupee fraud feels, well, a bit chaotic.
I mean, it definitely looks chaotic from the outside, but structurally, this is exactly how systemic anti-corruption sweeps actually operate.
Wait, really? By mixing the small stuff with the big stuff?
Yeah, exactly. It is the institutional equivalent of the broken windows theory, but applied to white-collar and political crime.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, when a justice system decides to reassert its authority, it doesn't just go after the apex predators. It goes after the entire ecosystem of impunity.
I see.
So the misuse of state resources like vehicles and fuel might seem relatively minor in financial scale, especially compared to a 27.5 million rupee fraud.
Right, it's just fuel.
But it is deeply symbolic. State vehicles are highly visible markers of power, right?
Oh, for sure. Everyone sees who's driving what.
Exactly. So prosecuting that sends a very clear psychological signal to the entire bureaucracy that the era of casual, everyday entitlement is closing.
Okay, I see. So it's about breaking the habit of corruption at the baseline level, so those larger frauds lose their foundation.
Precisely. You attack the culture of it. And then you have the complex, high-value financial fraud, which requires significant forensic accounting.
Right, the 27.5 million rupee case.
Yeah. Getting a fraud case of that magnitude to the magistrate level means investigators had to trace ledgers, subpoena bank records, and build a legally watertight narrative. It's not quick work.
It takes months, if not years.
Exactly. And then the third tier here is flight risk. which is represented by that open warrant for the former airline CEO's wife.
Oh,
Warrants like that are often utilized to secure borders and freeze international movement while domestic investigations solidify.
so they can't just hop on a plane and disappear.
Exactly. So you are seeing a multi-tiered approach.
Hmm.
Baseline administrative enforcement, complex financial prosecution, and border security all activating simultaneously.
Wow, okay. So it's not chaotic at all. It's highly orchestrated.
Very much so.
And we're also seeing a major push regarding structural legal boundaries. Like, former Minister Professor G.L. Paris is leading a coalition of opposition political figures right now.
Yes, regarding the judicial age limits.
Exactly. They submitted a letter directly to the United Nations opposing a planned judicial age extension. And I guess my question is, why does the retirement age of a local judge suddenly become an international UN issue?
Well, because the tenure of the judiciary is the absolute bedrock of institutional independence.
Right.
The argument generally leveled against extending judicial age limits, especially by political opposition, is the fear of executive overreach.
Meaning the politicians taking control of the courts?
Essentially, yes. If a sitting government has the power to arbitrarily extend the careers of specific judges past their mandated retirement, the perception is that the judiciary becomes beholden to the executive branch.
Because they owe their continued employment to the government in power.
Exactly. Whether that's actually true or not, the perception is incredibly damaging.
Right. It destroys public trust.
Exactly. So submitting a letter to the UN elevates this from just a domestic political squabble to an issue of international democratic norms.
Which actually brings me to the piece of this puzzle that completely fascinates me.
Well, the asset recovery.
Yes, because while all this local legal maneuvering is happening, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, the UNODC, has explicitly stated that the door is open for the country to recover stolen assets.
Yes, that is a huge development.
But how do these domestic arrests and this international open door actually connect mechanically? I mean, you don't just, like, email the UN and ask for a refund on stolen tax dollars.
No, not at all. And it's a common misconception that it's that easy. Asset recovery is arguably the most complex, agonizingly slow process in international law.
Why is it so slow?
Because the UNODC cannot simply repatriate funds just because a nation feels aggrieved or because there was a regime change. It requires the home country to prove, in a court of law, that specific assets hidden abroad, say a penthouse in London or a shell company bank account in the British Virgin Islands, were acquired through illicit means locally.
So the burden of proof is entirely on the local investigators?
Entirely. The legal mechanism relies on what are called mutual legal assistance treaties, or MLTs.
Okay, MLTs.
Yeah. To trigger an MLAT, the Domestic Place Financial Crimes Investigation Division has to provide irrefutable evidence tying a local crime to the foreign asset.
Oh, wow.
And then the foreign jurisdiction has to agree that the crime violates their laws as well. That's a concept called dual criminality.
I see. So if it's not a crime in Switzerland, they won't freeze the account.
Exactly. So when you see local magistrates processing massive fraud cases, you are watching the construction of the legal foundation required to walk through that UNODC door.
It's step one.
Exactly. You have to clean house domestically, secure convictions, and trace the paper trail locally before you can even petition an international court to freeze an offshore asset.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. You can't ask another country to freeze a bank account if you haven't even proven who embezzled the money back home.
Precisely.
But let me push back a bit on the reality of actually getting this done.
Yeah.
Because exposing that level of corruption requires insiders.
It does. It requires whistleblowers.
And in a highly connected political system, whistleblowing is basically career suicide.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is why I was looking at South Korea's newly developed system. They call it No Name, No Fear, which is a proxy reporting system for whistleblowers.
Yes. South Korea's No Name, No Fear is currently the gold standard in institutional transparency. It's a fascinating model.
How does it actually work?
Well, in most systems, the biggest barrier to accountability is the profound, completely justifiable fear of retaliation.
Right. Like losing your job.
Or worse. When you ask a mid-level bureaucrat to expose a multi-million-dollar fraud orchestrated by their superiors, you are asking them to risk their pension, their physical safety, and their family's well-being.
Yeah, no one wants to take that risk.
Exactly. So what a robust proxy reporting system does is sever the identity of the whistleblower from the evidence they provide. By using legally protected intermediaries, usually specialized independent attorneys.
Wait, hold on. While zero fear of retaliation sounds great in theory, Doesn't a completely anonymous proxy system just open the floodgates for false accusations?
That is the immediate concern, yes.
Right. I mean, if there's no name attached, how do you prevent someone from just weaponizing the system against a rival manager just to get them fired?
That is the exact vulnerability every whistleblower framework has to engineer around. And the key to the South Korean model is that it isn't just some public suggestion box where you drop a note and run away.
Oh, okay.
The reporting goes through authorized proxy lawyers. The whistleblower's identity is known to the proxy attorney, and it's bound by absolute attorney-client privilege.
So they aren't truly anonymous to everyone.
Right. The attorney acts as the filter. They verify the evidence, ensure it isn't a frivolous or malicious claim, and then they present the case to the authorities under their own legal standing.
Oh, wow. So the lawyer is one actually bringing the claim forward.
Exactly, shielding the source. And if the claim is fabricated, the attorney doesn't take the case because it risks their own professional standing.
That is brilliant.
It is. It forces transparency not through morality, but through a highly regulated, mathematically safer avenue for truth-telling.
That drastically changes the power dynamic in an office.
Completely.
When those engaging in illicit activities know that literally any single person in the room, an accountant, a driver, an assistant, can securely pass evidence to a proxy lawyer without any risk of exposure. I mean, the friction required to commit fraud just increases exponentially.
Exactly. It creates an environment of active deterrence.
Yeah.
And earning trust through that kind of accountability is the first step toward resilience.
Right.
But the second step is translating that institutional trust into actual economic survival.
Which brings us to the economic tides. And this is where that marathon in the emergency room analogy really kicks in.
Yeah, the numbers we are seeing are just staggering.
They really are dizzying. We have the Asian Development Bank, the ADB, stepping in to approve $200 million in emergency assistance, specifically for post-cyclone Ditwa recovery.
Right, acute emergency relief.
But simultaneously, we are looking at the unveiling of a massive national export development plan targeting $36 billion by 2030.
It's a massive pivot.
How does a system absorb disaster relief and plan a multi-billion-dollar trade empire at the exact same time?
You are basically observing a nation forced to operate on two entirely different macroeconomic timelines simultaneously. Okay. So the $200 million ADB emergency assistance represents immediate triage. Cyclone Ditwa caused tangible, acute devastation.
Right, physical damage to the country.
Exactly. That capital is required just to restore baseline functionality like rebuilding roads, restoring the power grid, preventing agricultural collapse.
Just keeping the lights on.
Yes. But an economy cannot survive on emergency debt injections forever.
No, obviously not.
So the $36 billion export target is the structural therapy. It is about laying the foundational engine that will, in theory, generate enough sovereign wealth to prevent the need for future emergency bailouts.
But $36 billion in exports, that requires a massive shift in global demand, doesn't it? Not just local production.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
Which is why the diplomatic signaling happening in the background right now is critical.
Like what?
Well, for instance, the outgoing ambassador to the United States, Mahinda Samaras, has publicly said he's expecting good news regarding major U.S. tariff relief within days.
Okay, let's break that down mechanically for a second. Reducing tariffs imposed by the U.S., how much does that actually move the needle for an exporter sitting in Colombo?
It acts as an immediate, massive force multiplier.
Really? How so?
Well, a tariff is simply a tax placed on foreign goods by the importing country.
Right.
So if a local manufacturer exports 1,000 shirts to the U.S., and the U.S. has a 15% tariff on apparel, those shirts become 15% more expensive for the American buyer.
Making them less likely to buy them.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, if the U.S. grants tariff relief, perhaps through a framework like the Generalized System of Preferences, and drops that tariff to zero,
suddenly the shirts are 15% cheaper.
right, those shirts instantly become incredibly competitive against global rivals like Vietnam or Bangladesh.
Wow.
It immediately increases the volume of orders and the profit margins for local exporters without requiring them to spend a single cent changing their own production costs.
That's incredible.
This is the top-down macroeconomic leverage that makes a $36 billion target mathematically conceivable.
Okay, so the top-down approach is negotiating with Washington.
Yes.
But the bottom-up approach is what really fascinated me in these sources. The newly launched Ceylon Tea Village National Program.
Yes, that's a brilliant initiative.
It's aiming for 400 million kilograms of tea output, but specifically by targeting the livelihoods of smallholder tea farmers.
Right.
Why pivot to smallholders instead of just subsidizing the massive corporate tea estates? Wouldn't that be easier?
It might be easier administratively, but empowering smallholder farmers creates a much more resilient grassroots economic base.
How does that work?
It's the concept of distributed risk. When an economy relies solely on massive corporate estates for its agricultural exports, any shock to that specific corporation, say a labor strike, a mismanagement crisis, or a localized crop failure, devastates the national GDP.
Because all your eggs are in one basket.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when you distribute production across tens of thousands of smallholders, creating a network tea village ecosystem, you are decentralizing the economic engine.
Right.
You are giving direct equity, land utilization, and income stability to rural families.
You are literally physically involving thousands of rural lives putting their hands in the dirt to build an economy leaf by leaf.
Exactly. So look at the architecture of the whole thing.
Yeah.
You have the emergency ADB aid acting as a bandage to stop the bleeding.
Right.
You have the U.S. tariff relief acting as an adrenaline shot to the export market's competitiveness.
Yeah.
And the Ceylon Tea Village acting as the long-term nutritional plan for the grassroots economy.
It is an incredible balancing act. But, and here's the big but, these local economic ambitions are highly vulnerable to the macro geopolitical tremors currently shaking the rest of the world.
They absolutely are. They don't exist in a vacuum.
Right. We are building this delicate local resilience while the global floor is actively cracking beneath our feet.
The macroeconomic signals we are observing right now are exceptionally severe.
Yeah, tell me about it.
I mean, the international community rarely speaks with one synchronized voice unless the internal data models are flashing red.
And they are definitely flashing red. We have just seen a dire joint warning issued by the heads of the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the World Trade Organization, and the International Energy Agency.
Yes, all four of them.
They are sounding the alarm over extreme global trade and energy risks due to an ongoing regional war.
Right. When those four specific organizations group up, you know it's serious.
Finance, development, trade, and energy all basically hitting the panic button at the exact same time.
Exactly.
And while that warning is flashing, we also have the Bank of Japan, the BOJ, making a historic move.
This is the really big one.
They just raised interest rates to 1%. Now, 1% might sound like pocket change, but this is the highest their rate has been since 1995.
And we really need to dive into the mechanics of this because the Bank of Japan raising rates to 1% fundamentally rewires global finance.
Rewires it. How?
Well, for 3 decades, Japan has maintained near zero or even negative interest rates in a desperate bid to combat domestic deflation.
Wait, negative interest rate?
Yeah, essentially. Because borrowing Japanese yen was practically free, it became the foundational funding source for global investment.
Okay, I need an analogy here. How does a zero interest rate in Japan fund the rest of the world?
Think of the Bank of Japan for the last 30 years as the world's absolute best free checking account.
Okay.
Global hedge funds and institutional investors would go to Japan, borrow massive amounts of yen for basically zero interest, convert that yen into US dollars or euros, and invest it in high-yielding assets.
Like what kind of assets?
Like US tech stocks, emerging market bonds, or real estate. This is a strategy known as the yen carry trade.
Ah, I've heard of that.
Yeah. You're borrowing for free and keeping the profit you make elsewhere.
That sounds like a cheat code for money.
It basically was.
So what happens when that free checking account suddenly starts charging a fee, which is what this 1% hike is?
The entire system goes into reverse.
Oh boy.
Suddenly, holding that debt costs money. Investors panic and start selling off their global assets, those US tech stocks, those emerging market bonds, to get dollars.
So they can convert them back to yen.
Exactly, to convert them back to yen and pay off their Japanese loans before the interest rates climb any higher. This acts like a massive vacuum, sucking liquidity out of global markets and pulling capital rapidly back to Tokyo.
So everyone is just scrambling to pay back their debts.
Right. And it makes borrowing money across the entire planet more expensive and significantly tighter.
So combine that financial vacuum with the joint warning from the IMF and the IEA about regional war. How does a regional war act as a global tax?
Through supply chain choke points and insurance premiums.
Okay, explain that.
When a regional war breaks out near vital shipping lanes or energy-producing regions, the maritime insurance rates for cargo ships skyrocket.
Because the ships might get attacked.
Exactly. Sometimes ships have to reroute entirely, adding weeks to their journey.
Which burns more fuel.
Yes, that burns more fuel and requires paying crews for much longer voyages. Furthermore, the global energy supply becomes threatened, which spikes the price of oil.
So it hits you directly as a listener. It's not just a boardroom problem.
It is entirely a living room problem.
Right.
When the price of oil spikes due to conflict, the cost to physically transport every single good in your life, from the concrete used to build your local hospital to the avocados in the grocery store, increases.
Because everything moves on a truck or a ship.
Exactly.
Huh?
And in the Bank of Japan tighten global money, which makes the local bank's interest rates for your car loan or mortgage go up.
It's a double whammy.
It is. A 1% rate hike in Tokyo and a drone strike on a shipping lane thousands of miles away inevitably show up as a higher number on your local grocery receipt and your monthly electricity bill.
It is all this interconnected, deeply fragile architecture.
Yes.
And we're also seeing political shifts adding massive variables to these regional complexities. For example, the ousted Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, who is currently exiled and facing charges.
Right.
She is reportedly planning a return in December with party colleagues to surrender to authorities.
From an impartial institutional perspective, the return of an exiled leader to face a domestic judicial system is one of the most intense stress tests a nation can undergo.
Why is that?
Well, on one hand, a peaceful surrender to a legal process can act as a profoundly stabilizing force.
Really?
Yes, it signals to the international community that the constitutional order is holding and that institutional accountability is functioning regardless of political stature.
But on the other hand, it is a massive polarization event, isn't it?
Precisely. The physical presence of a deeply polarizing historical figure can act as a catalyst for massive street protests, counter-protests, and legislative gridlock.
Which spooks investors.
Exactly. From a macroeconomic standpoint, foreign direct investment relies on predictability. Political transitions of this magnitude in South Asia are closely watched by global markets because regional trade stability is highly sensitive to civil unrest.
It's just wave after wave of systemic pressure.
It really is.
And speaking of daily realities and unpredictable disruptions, let's bring it away from the macro geopolitics and back down to the ground level.
Okay, let's do it.
Because right now, global climate shifts are creating very immediate and honestly sometimes bizarre local hazards.
Yes, the weather reports have been intense.
The weather is intensely punishing right now. We are seeing local temperatures hitting 31 degrees Celsius, paired with a stifling 74% humidity.
That is a brutal combination.
It is so severe that the Lady Ridgway Hospital for Children has had to issue public warnings about the extreme risk of child dehydration.
The combination of 31 degrees Celsius and 74% humidity requires us to look at the mechanics of the wet bulb temperature.
The wet bulb temperature, what's that?
Basically, the human body cools itself almost entirely through the evaporation of sweat.
Right.
As the humidity in the surrounding air approaches saturation, that evaporation process slows down and eventually stops entirely.
Because the air is already full of water.
Exactly. At 74% humidity, the air is already so saturated with water vapor that sweat cannot evaporate efficiently.
Oh, wow.
The body's internal thermostat begins to fail, leading to rapid, severe dehydration and heat stroke, particularly in children whose body surface area to mass ratio makes thermoregulation much harder.
That is terrifying. And as the human body reacts to the heat, the environment itself is reacting, often compounded by human error.
Oh, the forest fires.
Yeah, the Department of Forest Conservation is explicitly warning that strict legal action will be taken against individuals deliberately setting forest fires. And I just have to ask, why set fires during a heat wave?
It is the tragedy of the commons intersecting with extreme weather.
I mean...
Often fires are set deliberately to cheaply clear agricultural land or brush.
Oh, I see.
In a normal climate cycle, the moisture in the soil and vegetation naturally contains the fire. But during severe heat and high humidity, the vegetation is deeply stressed.
So it's basically tinder.
Exactly. A small clearing fire can instantly become an uncontrollable crown fire, destroying infrastructure and demanding massive state resources to suppress.
But then, as if the heat and the fires aren't enough, we have the complete opposite environmental extreme fueling a massive public health crisis.
The dengue outbreak.
Yes, the National Dengue Control Unit has just launched a massive 7-day special control program across 11 districts.
That is a huge mobilization.
It is. They are mobilizing 63 medical officer of health offices, right down to the Grama Niladhari division level, conducting granular door-to-door fumigation.
This is the biological consequence of those erratic climate patterns we just talked about.
How so?
Well, we are seeing intense heat immediately followed by unseasonal heavy rains, which leave thousands of micropools of stagnant water.
Which mosquitoes love.
Yes, this is the absolute optimal breeding matrix for the Aedes aegypti mosquito, which carries the dengue virus.
Right.
The reason the public health response has to be so heavily mobilized, coordinating 63 MOH offices down to the hyperlocal Graminealitari neighborhood level, is because of the biology of the mosquito itself.
Right. You can't just, drop medicine from a plane.
Exactly. The Aedes aegypti breeds in incredibly small volumes of clean, stagnant water.
Like
A discarded plastic cup, a blocked roof gutter, the saucer under a potted plant. A top-down national policy does nothing to stop dengue.
because it's too broad.
Yes, it requires a mobilized, almost military-style logistical effort of human beings physically walking into backyards, identifying larvae habitats, applying larvicides, and fumigating adult populations.
Wow.
It is the most labor-intensive form of crisis management.
It really is meticulous, granular work to fight a microscopic threat. But then you pan out and you see these environmental crises just spinning out of control in ways you can't even predict.
Oh, there have been some truly bizarre incidents lately.
Yeah, we get a report of a training aircraft in Ratmalana actually being hit by a kite string in midair, causing a near miss.
That is wild.
And even wilder, in China right now, severe flooding has completely overwhelmed a commercial breeding facility.
I read about this.
It led to the escape of up to 900 snakes, including highly venomous cobras, directly into the floodwaters.
It's just terrible.
We've got deliberate forest fires, kite strings taking out planes, and hundreds of cobras swimming through flooded streets. It feels like we are becoming our own worst environmental hazard.
What is fascinating here is the intersection of human enterprise and natural force.
Yeah.
The kite string hitting an aircraft in Ratmalana is a startling, almost absurd example of human recreation directly intersecting with critical infrastructure in shared airspace.
It just highlights how dense our living environments have become, right?
Exactly. But the situation in China perfectly illustrates what happens when human economic enterprise fails to account for the increasing severity of climate events.
Basically, the infrastructure was built for the old climate.
Precisely. We build commercial systems, like a massive snake breeding facility for anti-venom or agricultural use, assuming a predictable historical environment.
We assume it's going to be fine because it's always been fine.
Right. We assume a 50-year floodplain will hold. But when the climate breaks those historical boundaries, the resulting hazards aren't just natural, they are amplified by whatever we put in nature's way.
Like a building full of venomous snakes.
Exactly. 900 venomous snakes loosed into a chaotic flood zone is a black swan event of crisis management.
Imagine the contrast in these systems, though. On one side, you have local health workers painstakingly walking door to door, methodically flipping over plastic cups to kill mosquito larvae.
Very controlled, very local.
Right. And on the other side of the world, authorities are trying to wrangle 900 venomous cobras out of a flooded city because a concrete wall couldn't hold back a changing climate.
That captures the total spectrum of systemic fragility.
Yeah.
Some threats require intense, localized bureaucratic coordination, while others are massive, unpredictable infrastructural failures.
It's a lot. Yet, despite all these intense challenges, the climate chaos, the political shifts, the macroeconomic dread human culture, innovation, and our desire to connect continue to thrive in some really fascinating ways.
They do, thankfully.
And honestly, sometimes in deeply unsettling ways.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Let's talk about the video going viral out of China right now. It features a humanoid AI robot that is physically programmed to appear to be begging.
Yes, that video is everywhere.
It has sparked a massive ethics debate globally. A machine begging for spare change. It feels like we skipped a few chapters in the sci-fi dystopian novel we're currently living in.
It triggers a profound psychological dissonance, and the mechanics of why it bothers us are rooted deeply in evolutionary psychology.
Okay, how so?
Well, human empathy evolved over millions of years as a survival mechanism for the tribe. We are biologically hardwired to respond to genuine suffering.
Right. When we see someone in pain, we want to help.
Yes, we react to the physical posture of defeat and the vocal cues of desperation in other living beings.
Okay.
So when an artificial intelligence, a machine crafted of titanium, servos, and code, is explicitly programmed to simulate human poverty and desperation, It is essentially performing an empathy hack.
Empathy hacking.
Yeah.
That is exactly what it feels like. We want to feel compassion because we see the posture of suffering, but our brain knows it's a trick. Let me push back on the ethics of this, though. Is this any different than an actor playing a beggar in a movie to make us feel something?
That's a great question. The difference lies in the social contract of the interaction.
Maybe.
When you watch a film, you opt into a fabricated narrative. You know it as a performance designed to elicit emotion.
Right. I bought a ticket for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But a humanoid robot, begging in a public space, interacting dynamically with passersby, blurs the line between human vulnerability and program manipulation in real time.
It's an ambush?
Yes. And the ethical debate centers on resource extraction.
Like taking money from people.
Exactly. If a corporation programs a machine to convincingly mimic human suffering, specifically to solicit financial resources or data from empathetic humans, they are exploiting a biological vulnerability for profit.
Wow. That's dark.
It forces us to question the Turing test of emotion. If a machine can make you feel guilt, does the machine possess emotional intelligence, or are you just easily programmable?
It is incredibly unsettling. It makes you realize how fragile our own emotional operating system really is.
It really does.
So let's pivot to something that grounds us, something that brings genuine, ancient, undeniable joy.
Please.
Because Sri Lanka has just been named among the world's top 50 food destinations for 2026.
That is fantastic news.
And specifically, Fox Jaffna was highlighted among the top 30 dining spots in the country.
The juxtaposition here is perfect. On one hand, we are grappling with futuristic anxiety over manipulative AI, and on the other, we are celebrating the visceral, ancient, and deeply human sensory experience of culinary tradition.
Yeah, food is just so real, but why does culinary tourism matter so much right now, beyond just being a point of pride?
Because culinary capital is a massive, highly resilient economic driver.
How so?
We discussed the $36 billion export plan earlier, which relies heavily on manufacturing and agriculture. Right? But cultural tourism operates on a different economic axis. Food cannot be digitized or outsourced.
Oh, that's true. You can't download a meal.
Exactly. To experience the specific spice profiles, the regional techniques, and the cultural history embedded in the dining at Fox Jaffna, you physically have to travel there.
You have to show up.
And earning a spot in the top 50 global food destinations elevates the entire cultural profile of the nation. It draws high-value, experiential tourism.
Which brings in money.
Right, which distributes wealth directly into local supply chains. The fishermen, the spice farmers, the hospitality workers.
It is authenticity. In a world of AI manipulation, people are starving for something real.
Exactly.
Speaking of the value of shared stories and escapism, I see that the original dragon eggs from the global hit television series Game of Thrones are heading to auction.
Yes, I saw that too.
Bidding is already underway for these iconic props.
It demonstrates the commodification of shared mythology.
What do you mean by that?
In modern society, pop culture properties like Game of Thrones serve the sociological function that folklore use to providing a common narrative language.
Oh, like stories everyone knows.
Yes. The massive financial valuation of those physical props shows how desperately we want to own a tangible piece of a shared cultural experience.
We want to touch the magic, basically.
Precisely.
But my absolute favorite cultural story right now isn't about dragons or robots. It is about a profoundly human interaction right here in the city.
The Lotus Tower story.
Yes. Ghaffar Musafir, a travel vlogger, was visiting the Lotus Tower in Colombo.
Right.
He was somehow separated, forgotten, and basically lost. But he ended up having this incredible, heartwarming, lost and found experience hours later that completely changed his perspective on the city.
It's a wonderful story.
He has been singing praises about the honesty of the people who helped him ever since.
And why do you think that specific story resonates so powerfully?
Well, we build these massive structures, right? These towering multi-million-dollar monuments like the Lotus Tower to signify progress and modernity.
Yes.
But Ghafar's experience reminds us that it is the micro-interactions, the small moments of human kindness, the honesty of a stranger returning a lost item in a bustling city that actually define a culture.
Absolutely.
The concrete and glass fade away, the human connection leaves the permanent mark.
It is a vital reminder of what actually constitutes a functional society.
Yeah.
Infrastructure, $36 billion economic plans, and technological advancement are vital tools. But social trust is the actual glue holding it all together.
That's a great way to put it.
Whether it is the high-stakes trust required to run a no-name, no-fear whistleblower system to fight corruption,
Right.
or the everyday trust required to help a lost traveler at a tourist site, without that base like a human integrity, the systemic resilience fails.
It all comes back to trust. And speaking of things that unite us, that build that shared human experience across borders, languages, and geopolitical tensions, the summer of 2026 has delivered an absolutely unforgettable World Cup.
It has been
The
incredible.
drama on the pitch has been the ultimate psychological release valve for a stressed planet.
The narratives emerging from the knockout stages of this tournament have been exceptionally compelling studies in human endurance.
Let's run through the absolute brutality of these knockout stages. We had Switzerland beating Colombia in a phenomenally tense shootout to advance to the final 8, where they will now face Argentina.
Yes.
And let's talk about Argentina. They edged out Egypt 3-2. And who else but Lionel Messi alongside Enzo Fernandez delivering the late-game heroics to secure the win.
It's amazing.
Messi is still delivering stoppage-time magic in 2026. How is he biologically still doing this?
It really speaks to the narrative of psychological endurance over pure physical dominance.
What do you mean?
To perform at that elite level, under that specific pressure, requires an almost superhuman regulation of the nervous system.
Yeah.
When you analyze stoppage time victories, like Argentina's late surge, or Brazil avoiding a massive shock by beating Japan 2-1 with a 95th-minute goal by Gabriel Martinelli, you are watching the psychology of resilience play out in real time.
Right, because everyone is exhausted by the 95th minute.
Exactly. The teams that execute complex tactical plays in the 95th minute are the ones whose cognitive architecture doesn't collapse when the physical body is flooded with lactic acid and exhaustion.
It's pure willpower overriding the body.
Yes.
And sometimes it's just ruthless tactical dominance, like Belgium brutally knocking out the U.S. and sending a very clear message to the rest of the bracket.
That was a clinical match.
But nothing compares to the pressure cooker of that penalty shootout between Switzerland and Colombia.
A penalty shootout is arguably the most concentrated psychological stress test in modern sports.
It's so stressful just to watch.
It ceases to be about team strategy or athletic prowess. It becomes a purely neurological battle.
How so?
Can a single player suppress their amygdala, the brain's fear center long enough to control their heart rate and execute a fine motor skill?
While millions of people are watching.
Exactly. When the hopes of an entire nation and tens of millions of viewers are focused on their single motion.
And we don't just see this on the global football stage, we see this exact same high-pressure inspiration locally as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Consider the local sports triumph of racing sensation Yevon David.
Seamlessly tying the global macro narrative to the local level. What Yevon David is doing, flying the national flag on the Formula 3 stage, provides the exact same psychological utility as a deep World Cup run.
Saying it's a podium for Sri Lanka.
Exactly. During incredibly complex times when a population is simultaneously processing economic anxiety, unpredictable climate hazards, and political shifts, sports provide a vital psychological counterbalance.
Because it's an escape.
It's more than an escape. Real life is endlessly complex and morally gray. Sports offer a perfectly clear binary narrative. Win or lose, score the penalty or miss, cross the finish line or crash.
That's so true.
It is an organized environment of fairness that yields a moment of pure, unified national morale, which is incredibly precious for societal resilience.
It truly is the universal language. Think about how a single stoppage time goal by Martinelli or a podium finish by Yevon David navigating the extreme physics of an F3 car can momentarily unite a deeply divided world.
It brings everyone together.
For those 90 minutes or those 50 laps, the macroeconomic trade risks, the IMF warnings, the soaring humidity, and the geopolitical tensions just fade away.
Yes, they do.
We are all just watching human potential push against its absolute limits.
It is a necessary counterbalance. It proves that despite the fragility of our systems, human capability remains extraordinary.
So let's take a breath and look back at the incredible journey we've taken on this deep dive today.
We covered a lot of ground.
We really did. We started by examining the sharp, necessary edge of institutional accountability, the arrests, the multi-million rupee fraud cases, and the complex legal architecture required to walk through the UNODC's door and recover stolen assets.
Right.
We balance that systemic cleanup against massive economic pivots, weighing the reality of emergency disaster relief against the structural ambition of a $36 billion export plan, fueled by U.S. tariff relief and the grassroots power of the Ceylon Tea Village.
A lot of interconnected pieces there.
And then we navigated the tremors of the macro geopolitical world, diving into how Japan's 1% interest rate hike acts as a global financial vacuum and how regional conflicts tax our daily lives.
Yeah.
We confronted a climate that is forcing us to battle wet bulb temperatures, local forest fires, hyperlocal dengue mobilization, and the chaotic reality of flood-swimming cobras.
Which I will not forget anytime soon.
Same. And finally, we explored the uncanny weirdness and profound beauty of human culture. From the empathy hacking of begging AI robots to the ancient joy of Jaffna cuisine, the trust found at the Lotus Tower, and the unifying roar of endurance at the World Cup.
It is a vast amount of information to process, but it all connects.
It does.
And if we are to distill all this down into a single lens through which to view tomorrow, I would offer this final thought for you listening.
I'd love to hear it.
Consider how deeply interconnected our systemic vulnerabilities and our human triumphs truly are. As we inevitably build more advanced humanoid AI that can seamlessly mimic human suffering to manipulate our empathy, and as our shifting climate continually forces our infrastructure into deeper, more unpredictable crises, from runaway fires to flooded facilities, perhaps our ultimate survival strategy as a species won't actually be found in complex $36 billion export plans, tariff relief, or brilliant new algorithms.
What will it be found in?
Perhaps in the end, when the systems fail, our true resilience will be found in the very simple, deeply human, no name, no fear. Courage to simply tell the truth, to act with everyday integrity, and to fiercely protect one another in the face of the storm.
That is an incredibly powerful thought to leave on. The courage to tell the truth as our ultimate infrastructure.
Exactly.
I want to thank you all for joining us on this deep dive today, for bringing your curiosity and your time to this conversation. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep exploring the world around you. We will be right here to help you make sense of it all next time. Take care, everyone.